Sup nerds, I think a lot of you have seen the Gloomhaven mercenary packs and seen a couple of my posts and other stuff, and yeah, I decided Satha and Anafi, and I'm really happy about that. It's really hard to stop by when I talk about it. It was a really fun process, and I'll go over both of them specifically in two different videos. So today we're going to be talking about Satha. Let's get into it. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. If you want to, just a little comment helps out. And if you really want to help out, be sure to check out our Patreon. I do a little bit more blurbs on that, a little bit more Lancer content as well if you're interested in that. Satha came about in the middle of a little bit of inspiration where I pitched, and we'll get into the story of it. But Satha is really dear to me because it was one of those where I got to do a little bit more freeform design rather than Anafi, which required a little bit more specific, like, this is what we need, and can you put something together that'll work in this thing? So I'm really proud of that, and I'm just happy to share it. So we're going to be going over all the cards, as well as a little bit of backstory as to how Satha came about. So Anafi had already undergone significant design and development, and partway through that, I pitched Satha as like, hey, look at this, and shared this. And I shared it with a couple people in Cephalofair, and it was fine, whatever. But eventually, one December, Price is like, hey, can you send Satha over? I want to share it. And then less than, I don't know, a very short amount of time after that, they're like, hey, we want to kind of turn this mercenary pack project into one where we drop 4 at a time. And Anafi sounds cool, but Satha also sounds great, and you already have a draft going, so why don't you be the designer? Which was, to me, shocking, because I was like, okay, I tried to come up with a pitch, and I've never actually had a pitch go to, hey, look at this, and then have it turn into, yeah, can you do that? Because always, every time I pitch ideas, it's mostly as a joke or being silly or, hey, wouldn't this be cool? And this one I actually done a little bit of work on, so that felt really good. But it was definitely in the draft state at that point, whereas Anafi, once we got to the developing all 4 mercenary packs, Anafi was done design-wise, and I had done some of my own development outside of working with Drew and Dennis. As a result, Anafi, the version that is in everyone's hands, and the version I handed off, are incredibly similar, whereas the Satha version at this point in time to the end are incredibly different. We went through a lot of development, and I really want to thank Drew. Drew is amazing, and he was so communicative during this whole process. So Drew, wonderful dude. And it was a big learning experience for me because Satha underwent several changes. Specifically when I did want to put in a resource system to have her generate basically leadership or something like that. Leadership inspiration or something like that. And eventually I decided to simplify it and bring her kit down to, instead of doing 3 things, doing 2 things, specifically being a support role or being a frontline kind of tank or bruiser, something like that. And to simplify it to where she would give people inspiration. And so people would be inspired or not as a Boolean value. And she could do things that were either powerful, depending on how many people were inspired, or make sure that people that were inspired could do a special action, or so on and so forth. We did try to make that work, including one card called Lone Wolf. The funny part is Lone Wolf, Drew and I tried so hard to make it work. And I love, because I was like, well, what if this, what if this? And he tried a few things here and there, and it just couldn't. But it was mostly as a way to, what if Satha plays a little bit more independently, and it helps the 2-player teams, because any support character like that who's trying very hard to inspire multiple people might need a little bit of help. So the idea is Lone Wolf is she can effectively inspire herself, and then blah blah. It ended up just being trashed. It could not work. I am so glad we went through the exercise of learning through that and hearing people's feedback, and that was immensely helpful. The funny part is some aspect of Lone Wolf did get moved in a much more powerful version, but as a level 9 loss. So semi-preserved. I think that was Drew ideas to move it to level 9 and just leave it there. So thanks to him for that. But Satha really turned out to be more of a frontline bruiser with a little bit of a support theme than the initial pitch, because inspiration entirely got scrapped. I don't want to go into mechanics just in case we do end up reusing some of them, because I don't necessarily think the mechanics were bad, but we didn't want to release 4 really high complexity characters, and Satha was like the best candidate to be a lower complexity character. During the idea for like design and development for Satha, I was heavily inspired by specifically the Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition Warlord and a little bit of the Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition Fighter. And I know a lot of people have opinions on 4th edition, and like they're like, oh, I don't think that was a good system and it was bad. And everyone who says that is wrong. I am incredibly convinced that either first off, it's also not a good fit. Like, trolling aside, some people just didn't like it, but Dungeons and Dragons traditionally has had problems in its combat system being either too finicky, a little bit too light, and just being, or some sort of, it never really had an identity beyond like when you play more time, you're getting into like some skirmish warfare, stuff like that. And D&D 4th edition really brought together, like, we are doing combat when we're doing combat, we're doing skills when we're doing skills. But that's a whole new rant. I can talk for like hours on D&D 4th edition, and I won't. But the D&D 4th edition Warlord and Fighter had really cool kits that I loved, that first off made non-caster characters really interesting and scale well. And I'm like, we need that in Gloomhaven. We need someone with this frontline presence who doesn't like cast spells and do elements, which first of all, Gloomhaven already does well. But I'm like, what if we took this kit and could effectively convert it with a theme to Gloomhaven? And what if that was Satha? So I'm like, hey, Price. And then Price later was like, hey, you talked about this and showed me some cards. Can you like send it to me? So I had a very early draft. I think her cards literally only went to level 4 at the time, and she had no perks. It was an incredibly early draft. And they're like, we want this. And that's how that began. So yada, 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 we eventually get to release. I don't want to get into too much, but because there's a lot of the development details, I think we're just going to get into on a per card basis. So I'm just going to go do a review of the cards and a little bit of backstory on them, and as well as my thoughts on them. So I kind of want to talk about our base kit first, honestly. So we're not going to the cards. Satha has the high hit point pool as well as a hand size of 10, predominantly because, I mean, she's got a pretty standard kit of cards. I don't think there's any special gimmicks or mechanics, although there are a couple persistent cards that you can use. They're non-loss persistent cards, which I think are very playstyle defining as well. Specifically, Get Behind Me and Take Command. Although some of the cards get renamed, so if I get to the cards and I have to update myself, I'm pretty sure those are the names of them. But she primarily uses the ice element as but not the ice element, not necessarily as a like, in the traditional caster sense. She'll either use the ice element to empower allies or allow her to take additional attacks or hit harder in melee. So she's a very upfront bruiser tank. Specifically, if you want to specialize into more of a get behind me kind of build, you're going to be building the tankiest version of Satha you can. And Satha absolutely can tank. As a matter of fact, one of her Masteries, it requires you to not allow any of your allies to be targeted by attacks for an entire scenario, which is great. So how do you do that? She has a very good kit to keep her at the front while still sustaining her, while also, if you want to go into more of a support kit, she has that. She has a little bit more damage dealing as well, but her damage dealing definitely is a little bit more bursty, or I found out from my experience that a lot of the higher damage stuff usually uses when she does her own damage while also enabling allies. So I think her more leader support build ends up doing more damage than her upfront tanky build in the first place. So, but primarily, I don't think she has a little bit of control. She has a lot of support. An incredible amount. You don't need to use it, but she has that built in her kit. I think her as a striker, she's pretty medium, and a defender, you either are incredibly good or decent. So it really depends on the kit, because she is not inherently tanky, but she has a few cards in her kit that puts her up with some of the other more durable frontline characters. So, and she actually is naturally fairly durable to begin with. So But I'm going to be mentioning some kind of build options as we go through. Now we're going to the cards. Shared Glory. So Shared Glory, the funny part is Shared Glory was bounced around a bit, but the idea is initiate. There's a lot of Satha, to get her working, the problem is because she has a lot of cards that require you to go before enemies, she has a lot of very early initiatives and plenty of late initiatives, which, first off, I love that so much. I don't like middle initiatives, which she does have, but there's a lot of earlies. But Shield 1, grant an ally move 2, and infuse ice. This is a perfect setup to get into position early, and shield yourself, put an ally into the position where you want them or put them out of harm's way, which is really good if you want to get an ally into a spot where maybe they position themselves in a dangerous position. You just want to get them out and get yourself up while also shielding yourself. That's fantastic. Additionally, infusing ice helps you set up a few other things which become incredibly important. We'll get to, especially like Blade of the North, which is one of our heavy hitters. The funny part about Shared Glory is the loot action. So, like the next time an ally gains loot, you get a loot from the supply. So you don't get a scoop of loot on the ground. You get a scoop of loot from the supply for free. Then you loot one, and then you grant an ally loot one. This is one of the few times where I've seen people looting. When Satha loots, people get happy rather than like, oh crap, and you initiative 8 looted. Nah. I loot, you loot, I get more loot. It is just so fun. This version makes it to where... because Satha is like more leader and cooperative, this version ends up being really fun to where most of the time people want Satha to be doing the looting, especially if you're doing this in like more of a Frosthaven scenario where you do want to loot all the things to progress your outpost. So as a result, Satha is one of the best people at upgrading the outpost. It's shocker, right? It's kind of built into the mechanics. So first off, one of the very good cards that I ended up really, really enjoying. I think this was, I think, just Shield 1, Infuse Ice, and I did add more Grant moves, and we ended up moving it over to the top of this to have it Shield, Grant an ally movement, and Infuse Ice. The granting an ally movement is also critical once we get behind me, which is one of the defining cards. But the problem is get behind me does have this very critical asterisk of allies can't be targeted or else you lose the card. To the discard pile, not the lost pile. So this helps make sure you take the hits and gets allies out of danger. Bring them down. Hardly touched it all from the original version, which I love. But it's just a ranged attack 2, initiative 16, attack 2 at range 3. Then you strengthen an ally at range 3. And then infuse ice. Again, there's a couple of ice infusers that you just need to help set up your spenders later, and this is one of them. Additionally, Satha has a few abilities that affect allies that have strengthen. So strengthen becomes a pretty important condition for her to distribute if you want to play those cards. There's only like 2 or 3 of them, I think, but it's worth mentioning at this point. Just because of that. But bring them down, pretty easy. You do some damage, you make an ally attack with advantage on their next turn, and you get ice. What more could you want? And the bottom is just a nice move too. Then each time the first attack an ally has against an enemy adjacent to you each round gets +1. So all you have to do is get into melee and then boost allies' attacks. I don't think it matters which build you're going. You want to get up into range of enemies anyway, and then giving allies a boost. This one ends up being just useful for everyone because you always just want to make enemies die, and you want to get in position. Initiative 16 is good as well. The top, I think, is a little bit more support focused, but I think the bottom's useful for all builds. I also want to note, I'm not going to be doing guides for any of these characters. I think if there are guides to be built on these characters, I want them to be made by the community. So I'm just kind of more doing a review here. Blade of the North, initiative 76, which is fine. It's an attack 3, which is not great, but it's an attack 5 with 1 experience with ice. This is one of your big spenders, so a lot of times you'll set up with like some of the buffs or shields and then use Blade of the North as your heavy hit on the turn following, making that little frosty tempo. There's a couple other spenders that are worth noting, but this was, I think, one of the primary ones, but giving a non-loss attack 5 at level 1 ended up being pretty reliably liked. The bottom is a very easy support striker action of 1 ally performs an attack 6 Boom, big hit. Not only that, but when we get to take command, you can see that you can very easily turn this into an attack 7. And with take command and play, and if you did something like bring them down on top, you can say, hey, perform an attack 7 with advantage. So it becomes incredibly bursty once you get to those persistent cards. Victory Rush, slightly modified from the development version, but attack 3 with advantage, which is solid in itself. And if the attack ability killed an enemy, you can strengthen the you can strengthen the ally closest to you or yourself. So strengthen's very important, but attack 3 with advantage, and then if you kill the enemy, keep strengthen on yourself for the rest of this turn and your next turn. Positively great. 63 initiative I think is fine. It's ultimately, I think both parts of this card ended up being so good that you really need to pair it with better initiatives, because if you want to go early, you're going to have to use one of your early initiatives to get into position, or the bottom attack, which is because the bottom's an attack. Having low initiatives on bottom attacks ends up usually being too strong. So you have to usually pair it with some sort of high initiative top, which perfectly fine. The bottom is just a attack 2, heal 1 at range 2. Very basic, but bottom attacks, incredibly important. Also, the heal 1 is incredibly good when you're fighting enemies with like brittle poison wound and stuff, and just being able to clear debuffs. It's just really good. So 10 out of 10 here on. I really love Victory Rush. It was one of my favorite cards that we put together. The funny part is Victory Rush was initially, I think what the initial design was, it was supposed to heal yourself, and then we needed more strengthen, so we dropped the healing. I ended up dropping the healing on the early draft and moving it over to strengthen because we needed more sources of strengthen. And but this was more inspired by a World of Warcraft warrior, where it's like after you defeat an enemy, you get a free attack that heals you or something like that. And it ended up just changing to that. And the problem with Victory Rush is because it is kind of contingent on defeating an enemy, the built-in advantage ends up being fairly important than making it like one of the hard hitters. And plus, we don't want it interfering with like Blade of the North, which is your real hard hitter. Hobbling Sweep. Funny part is this one almost made it through like playtest untouched, but a sweep of Immobilize was just too powerful the entire time. It was either too weak or too powerful, and end up being moved. The sweep Immobilized ended up moving to a very late level card. But we have it here in the form of Muddle, and with Ice you can make it attack 3, 1 experience, muddle 2 enemies in a cleave formation. And I do like the 86 initiative. I think those are one of my favorites. I don't know what the number is, but somewhere in the 80s through 90s are one of my favorite initiatives. Honestly, anything above like 96 is hard to ask for, but those are so primo. And anything under 14, those two are my favorites. But 86 is pretty solid. And then you got a nice jump 3 added to the kit, and add +1 to your next attack if you're adjacent to 2 or more enemies, which I love. That's a lot of the times what we'd use with Blade of the North, is do some sort of tanky early move while having get behind me and play. So you have a nice big shield. Next turn, just go late, jump into 2 enemies, strike them for an attack 6. Ends up being really pretty solid. It's really... I think Hobbling Sweep ended up being one of the more fun cards. I'm pretty sure it was just initially like +1 to your next attack, but having jump and requiring you to be next to 2 enemies. Being next to 2 enemies is sometimes hard, but adding jump, I think, makes it significantly easier to land. Lead the Charge, initiative 39, attack 3, but it's an attack 4, push 2, 1 experience if you were adjacent to no enemies at the start of the turn. Basically, you have to be able to kick in the door. Funny part is this is actually incredibly good. I am surprised at the amount of times where you can use a long move with Lead the Charge to open doors, and then see how many times there's like hazardous terrain or traps in the next room. I'm like, that's so funny, except for when it's stupid imps, and you're like, oh, they're flying, it's not going to affect them. But a lot of times an attack 4 can, with enough luck, can take some of the imps out anyway. But Lead the Charge, one of my favorite door openers. And the bottom is just a move 3, and then grant an ally within 3, move 2. Hard to complain about that. Very good for positioning. If I recall correctly, I think the bottom of that was initially on the card that was moved later, Wolfpack Tactics. Wolfpack Tactics, I think, was the first card I built for the class. And I'm pretty sure this was the movement of that. We had to move it off of it, though. But we'll get to Wolfpack Tactics when we get to the X cards, because it was moved to an X. Spur Their Spirits. So this was initially a level 2 card, and then it got moved down. We moved this around. This was added to the kit later. During the development process, I think there was the decision to, what if we made her a little bit more bruiser? And then I'm like, no. We need a bit more leadership. So Take Command and Spur Their Spirits ended up being the bigger ask there. We're like, we need to add these. And so that was added during development back into the kit. It's a nice heal oneself, clears conditions, ward self, perfect. Like, this is such a strong card just to have a little bit of damage prevention and healing. But then one ally can play a card from their hand and do a top or bottom actions on it for free. There's no prerequisites. One ally can just play a card. Like, some of those ring cards that were really powerful in Gloomhaven First Edition, boom. Just do it. Now, of course, heal oneself, ward self is not a super good action. So obviously, this is more there as a compensation for you get to do a weaker action and an ally gets to do a full action. The bigger part of this is for classes that are either in between like rest cycles where they're not even like they're like 9 cards, and like making them play an extra card doesn't do that. Or if they started with 9 or 11 cards to begin with, a lot of times we'd use this to fish out, allowing them to play another card to begin with. This one's clearly more the leader build, and especially when we get to Take Command. I should have just started with Take Command and Get Behind Me, honestly, but whatever. We'll just get to this. I'm just doing them in the print order that was sent to me by Lane. Lane's a fantastic person. We love him. But yes, Initiative 18, make an ally play a card, get a little bit of protection, perfect. And the bottom of that is just straight up, the next time an ally would suffer damage this round, negate it. Perfect. Also super hilarious on boss fights. That bottom, although the top is incredibly good, the bottom on boss fights is funny, especially when what was it? Not doing spoilers, but seeing an attack 9 just turn into nothing is hilarious. That's all I gotta say. Implacable Advance. Do apologize. I sometiime really like names from stuff, but that one was inspired by the 3rd edition Warhammer 40k Wraithlord from the Eldar, Craftworld Eldar. This version got slightly, it used to be a full sweep of 3 hexes, got changed to 2, and stun 2, and those 2 hexes. First off, stunning potentially 2 enemies is great, but then you and all allies within range 3 jump 3. The biggest thing I've seen this for myself that I used it during my own testing is when you open a door and then enemies somehow draw all the +1 moves, and you're like, we are all blocked up on a Friday night and none of us can get into this next room. Implacable Advance. Okay, some of you enemies can just get stunned, and then all of us are going to jump into the room. Clears stuff up so much. I'm going to be honest, there is too many times where we've been able to use a bonus jump 3 on the top to get into the correct position to stop some of these very fuzzy situations or get allies out of bad positions. Initially, this sounded like a good card. This is one of my favorite losses. Also, situational loss that you want to use at the key moment, and the bottom is a move 4. I love it. I know I'm like hyping myself, patting myself on the back, but like, we did a good job there. Yes, we did. Combined Might initially was an X card, and Drew moved it to the ones just because I do think it actually is pretty solid as is. But it's just attack 3, pierce 2, and then the next time an ally attacks this round, also pierce 2 added to them. This is entirely was part of the kit, added to the kit as the way I wanted to design for how she deals with shielded foes, which is why I initially put it on the X, but honestly it's still pretty solid as is. The Initiative 22 is pretty good, and then you can move 3 and with ice ward yourself. I want to point out that the bottom of this, even though the top is pretty supporty, the bottom of this ends up being very useful for using in the more defensive builds, because you have plenty of shield and you can very easily mitigate those to incredibly low numbers with just a move and ward yourself. Especially if you don't want to use stuff like Blade of the North. You can use this as get into position, shield yourself up, ward yourself, boom, perfect. So Combined Might has uses in both builds, but ultimately using it as a lot of times Living Bones or Ooze Whacker. Much fun. Much fun. Get behind me is one of the defining builds, Niche 11. Shield 1 forever. Notice that is a 1 experience and forever. It's not a loss, so you can let it fall off. And speaking of letting it fall off, at the end of any round in which an ally was attacked, you must move this to the discard pile. Because it says at the end of any round, that means that even if an ally gets attacked, like very early, you still get the shield for the rest of the round. So at worst, this is you get shield 1 for this round. Just if you shield yourself and then an ally gets attacked. At best, this is shield 1 for an entire scenario. Well, you can kind of just do that yourself. It's really powerful. And without that, it's got to move 4. Keep in mind that there's a lot of cards, especially in a lot of the more defensive kits, that are like shield 1 for the round, or like this item gives you shield 1 for 1 or 2 attacks. Cumulative shields I've found to be significantly more important. So being able to use this with shared glory. So get behind me, have shield 1, move into place, use shared glory. So now your shield becomes to 2 plus whatever items you have. And then shared glory, it does, like I mentioned earlier, allow you to get an ally out of a bad position. So you take the hit for them. Now with shield 2. Notice, and especially when you have stuff like combined might, where you're like, all right, I've now moved up into position, shield 2, now I ward myself. You can watch as you get into safety. I'm going to take this hit, shield 2, half damage. See how durable she ends up being over the course of a scenario. So this one is one of the key card for defenders. Again, though, you have to put yourself into position to where you're the one taking the hits and get allies out of position as well. You can use that with some communication, but ultimately, I think that, anyway, I just like this card a lot. So the phrasing here was very much inspired by Drew. Initially, there was there was supposed to be some other... there was a little bit more of a contingency associated with the shield, but I like this revision. Again, I'm going to be praising Drew so many times because he did a fantastic job of taking the ideas and making them more playable, really. That's the version. Like, there was just a lot of rough points that he just ironed out, and he did a great job. We're now in the X cards. Take Command. The big part's the bottom, but the top of Take Command is a big cleave where... in this little cone, attack 4 on all enemies. If there's any allies in them, they heal 4 instead as a loss. I am going to say that I think Isaac did a fantastic job on the Banner Spear, and I think it's a little finicky at too many points. So this is an example of you don't need an ally in a specific zone, but you reward for having allies in specific zones. So... if there's an ally behind you and an enemy in front of you in this little formation, you can attack 4 on the enemy, heal 4 on the ally, and who knows, you can even use it more versatilely, like run up and hit 3 enemies for 4. It ends up being as versatile as you want it to be. Keep in mind you do have to perform the attack for the heal to trigger, though. The bottom is really where it comes out, and this is another one where Drew really ironed it out. Initially, there was it was just supposed to be allies get a bonus when you do some grants. But the problem is with Spur Their Spirits, you're just saying they play a card. It's not really a grant an ally. So it's just allies have +1 attack and +1 move to all their attacks and moves during your turn. Thank you, Drew, for the phrasing. That was what I wanted to go for, but sometimes, you need to rephrase what you want to make sure it encompasses everything in the kit. So same thing as what I wanted. Drew did a fantastic job of framing it in a better way. 10 out of 10. This is huge because you have a significant amount of grant movements. Like, you remember like the Implacable Advance where y'all jump 3? This is where it's like everyone jump 4 real fast. That is huge. Especially there's a lot of grant ally move 2s that are just thrown in the kit that turn into move 3s. The amount of time one hexes ends up being the difference is significant. And because you have a lot of attacks, especially once you get to like the level 5 where you've got a couple of ranged attacks that you can grant people, which we'll get to that in a second, but this can end up adding to a lot of damage over the course of a scenario just by having the attacks, as well as allowing people to be in the right position for the move. This is one of my favorite. Take Command was really what I wanted to build Satha around to begin with. The bigger problem is a lot of people don't like support characters, so we wanted to add another option to make sure that she had viability in other builds. But I'm just saying it. Take command build is my favorite, and I will always love it. Wolfpack Tactics, the first card I designed. I don't think it's really changed much at all. I think just infusing ice, and I think the numbers are one. I think it was a 2 and a 3, but with take command, it's a 2 and a 3 anyway. But attack 2, grant an ally attack 2, which becomes an attack 3. Infuse ice, perfect. Also notice initiative 26 is a very popular initiative for hounds. That's by default. That's by design. Move 3, and then grant all allies within range 3 move 1, and this move must end closer to an enemy. Note that with take command, this means all allies can move 2, and it must move closer to an enemy. Themed very Wolfpacky. Initially, I think Wolfpack Tactics was supposed to be like you're trying to outflank enemies, but requiring allies to be either adjacent to enemies was kind of annoying, but at least saying, here, have a free move, but you can't move away from enemies. So this is definitely more of like Wolfpacky. You do need to get closer to enemies. So this one's not a get out of jail free card. But, if you're adjacent to enemies, you must end it adjacent to an enemy. At least you get a free move 3 for yourself, though. Emboldening Call, it's got a throwaway element on it, which you're always needing. Heal 3 on an ally, and if you heal 3 on anyone, including yourself, so even the tank build kind of uses this as a heal yourself. But if you heal an ally, they get to move 2, and with take command, it becomes a move 3. Actually, I think there was one version of the take command that ended up meaning boosting your heals, but I ended up pitching that. Oh yeah, there was a version where whenever you inspired the older version, whenever you inspired allies, you also warded them. That was way too powerful. Every now and then you need a little bit of lesson in, oh, this sounds cool, and like, nope, that's not good. Anyway, nice heal 3 with a move built in and move 4. I don't think there's a lot to say about it. It was weird how this ended up being kind of like a filler card I just ended up using that ended up being pretty important to the kit, especially if you wanted to have heal. Getting to the level 2 cards, Outmaneuver. I actually remember, I forget what this was called initially. I think this was in the point in time where I had a lot of demo test names. I had a lot of cards with just silly names because I had ideas for cards and wasn't sure what to name them. And I'm pretty sure there was one point in time where I think it was the level 6 or 5 to 9 cards. I think it was 6 though, where I sent the wrong project over to Drew, which was the correct cards, but the wrong names. And I'm pretty sure Drew was incredibly confused by the names. This is permanently in my memory because I'm like, this would be too long to explain all the inside jokes. Those are not the correct names. So I had to send him over a new project file. That was funny. Anyway, Drew suggested Sortie on the name on this because I forget what the initial card was. And then I'm like, no, I like Outmaneuver. Sortie is also a really good name, though. So 10 out of 10. He does like to pitch French names, though. So, which we do like French. Je parle un peu de français. Attack 3, grant an ally within range 3, move 3, infuse ice. Slightly better than the level 1 card, which is what you want on a level 2, except the initiative 41 kind of sucks. But I do think this is one of those good cards, especially the bottom. Notice the one thing about Outmaneuver that I initially was like, is this either A, getting an ally into position to where they want to be is good, but also saving an ally from being out of position is another one of those. But this one's, I think, a little bit more powerful than the typical shield oneself and grant an ally move that you get from Shared Glory at level 1. The bottom of Outmaneuver is you move 3, and then you have advantage on all of your attacks, targeting enemies that are adjacent to you or adjacent to one of your allies. It's really just you need to get into a position where if you're doing melee attacks, it's just advantage on all your melee attacks this round. Perfect. But if you want to do any of your ranged attacks, you have advantage on them, provided they're adjacent to one of your friends. We love it. This one was definitely more 4th edition fightery inspired, getting bonuses and from being on the right position kind of stuff. Stand Firm. We're going to give Drew credit for the top of this, though. Heal 3, it's a loss. Heal 3 self and ward self. Very good recovery action there, but obviously not worth a loss. But the second part, whenever you attack this round, gain shield 1 for the round. Note that there is no cap. Every time you're attacked, shield 1, shield 2. So then the second time, shield 2. It goes up forever. there is no cap. This bonus is cumulative. And then also infuse ice and get 2 experience, 12 initiative. 10 out of 10. This little inflatable shield, I think, was the ongoing test joke name, I think, was on it. Anyway, thanks, Drew. Impeccable design. Taking one of the more boring cards of the shield self and turning it into something more interesting. So 10 out of 10 there. The bottom is also very good for the defender build. You heal yourself for 1 or 3 if you're next to an enemy. Also non-loss infuse ice. Obviously still useful for the other builds, but I found this is more like you're a defender, you've gotten yourself rooted in the right position, heal yourself a little bit. We love that. Little help here. Also, one of the initiatives, Initiative 15. She has like all the low-level initiatives. Wait till we get to the 6 and whatnot. But shield oneself, and then you grant an ally a ranged attack. That's ranged 4, attack 2. But they must attack an enemy adjacent to you. So you have to get up in front of them, which if you... This is like a combination. Because get behind me, you want to get shielded up and get next to enemies. Take command, you want to grant ally attacks, boom. If you're using both, and not saying that a lot of people ran both, but if you are using both, you have shield 2 and you're granting people an attack 3 and adjacent to attacking an enemy adjacent to you. We love that. But no, usually you'll only be running 1, but if you are running both, this one's a very good card for that. And then the bottom's just a move 5. Satha's got a lot of maneuverability. I just want to put that out there. She's got maneuverability and durability. We love her. Satha's one of my favorites. I really loved just deciding this class. Raze. I'm glad that this was almost this was so close. Anyway, Raze initiative 6. The next time an enemy dies this round, your ally closest to that hex where the enemy died gets a strengthen. Throw an element of fire, which we kept. That was also mine. Where I'm like, I tried to do some throwaway elements to just have her give away to allies. Anyway, she ends up helping the gem in it a lot because fire and light, I think, are throwaway elements. But attack 3 wound. This is the only wound in our toolkit, I believe. So worth noting. The bottom of this is really where the Raze action ended up coming onto it. Now, it ended up being too powerful, so it was, if I recall correctly, Drew's decision to make it to where you need ice to get the benefit of this. At the end of each character's first move ability this round, one enemy next to them suffers a damage. The cool part we did with this is we can say, aha, I'm going to consume ice, and now I'm going to move next to him. We're going to grant an ally move, and then there's like, I'm going to shield myself, grant an ally another move, and just slam a bunch of guys up to them. It was really funny when working with people with summons and just watching summons base enemies and like whittle them down. The bottom of Raze is one of my more fun actions. I do like the top because you can like let an ally potentially, hey, someone kill this enemy. If you do, you get to strengthen. And people are like always like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to kill that enemy. Yeah, of course you are. It's motivating to the allies. You are inspiring your friends to kill the enemies. It's funny seeing that work on a mechanical level. So, I'm patting myself on the back for that one, and the bottom, I was really, really fun with summons. A lot of times since we were testing multiple of these at the same time, like Satha and Anafi ended up being really good friends, if only because of, you have a couple summons that need to get in play, and you do too, boom, just 1 damage, 1 damage, 1 damage, and then like 2 of the summons didn't attack. I'm like, wow, that thing died fast. It was really fun. Level 4, strike now. I'm sad that I keep on trying to add exclamation points to card names. Get behind me, strike now. And the exclamation points were removed. So I'm going to ask politely that all of you just add exclamation points to every card you think deserves it. Like emboldening call, sure. You add it there. I didn't add one there, but like anytime you think that it needs an exclamation point, just add it. If anything, add exclamation points to all the cards. Anyway, we're going to get into the card instead of ADHD. Attack 3. And then this one's a fun one. You need an ally to have strengthen. I think this is maybe one of the two. Any ally who has strengthen can now play a card for free. You attack 3, and a strengthened ally now gets a bonus. People love playing cards. 52 initiative is garbage, but that's just a strong card. You get to do an attack, an ally gets to do an attack. Really fun. Perfect for the tank command kind of build. And the bottom is nicely an attack 2, pierce 2 with ice infusing. So bottom is very good, especially if you're in the position already. Remember how I said that bottom attacks usually don't have good initiatives? Not saying that all bottom attacks have poor initiatives, but this one was another card where the Satha already has a lot of good initiatives. So you needed to pair this with 1, because 52, is the enemy going to move away or not? It's hard to guess at 52, but when you want to move late or move early, Satha has too many ways to go early. So this rarely came up where, oh no, an enemy walked away and now I can't use my bottom action. No. You can go early enough. You can undercut like anything, except for like those initiative 5 imps, I guess. Anyway, Northern Valor, attack 3, and it has +1 attack for every adjacent enemy to you. Infuse ice. It was funny. This is like completely unchanged from the OG version of this. It's funny to like actually come up with an idea and then have it be unchanged at all. Trust me when I say there are a crap ton of iterations through most of these, and her initial kit and the end are so very different. So we're not saying that but it's funny to see a car make it through testing and go like, you nailed that on the first try. I don't know how that worked. Bottom is pretty similar too, but Drew added some text to make it less confusing than the OG version, which was initially just a mega heal buff. So attack, heal 8 self and strengthen self, which we love. Obviously on a loss, that's pretty big. But then if you end up healing yourself to max or over healing yourself, you get to ward, which is great. It means prevent some damage on your next attack. If you heal 8 self and you're still not at maximum, your next attack this turn gets a +3 bonus to it, which is huge, especially now that you're strengthened. So if you're at particularly low health and you're like, nah, we're going to recover. We're going to get 8 health back. We're going to get strengthened, and my next attack is going to land with a big bonus on it. Loved it. The versatility on Northern Valor is pretty nice. I know, patting myself on the back, but thank you, Drew, for making that more of an interesting thing than the initial version, which was just kind of baking it into there. So honestly, level 4 is one of my favorite levels. I just like both of those cards so much. But level 5 is also one of my favorites. So the funny part, remember when I said like a lot of the test cards had weird names? Almost all of them were just metal bands or metal song names. I was distracted by Cat. So at level 5, and I don't know how it made it through testing this way, you have the option of choosing between two metal bands. Unleash the Archers, who I think they're pretty decent. I've seen them live twice. They're pretty good. I know they have a huge fan base that really love them. I think they're just solid, and I like their performance. Fantastic live performance. Highly recommend them. And then the other option is Armory, which I love. I think their 2013 album, Empyrean Realms, is one of the greatest. I mean, they haven't dropped an album since. It's very sad. But Armory's Empyrean Realms, 10 out of 10. Go listen to them, says Alice. And you'll say, thank you, ma'am. I love everything that you have peak taste in metal. And I'm like, I know I do. Anyway, we should probably talk about the cards. But yeah. 2 allies within range 3 get to do attack 2, range 3 with ice. Keep in mind with take command, this is grant 2 allies 2 attack 3s at range. I love that so much. Because keep in mind, take command says to all attacks granted. So if you grant 2 attack 2s, that's granting 2 attack 3s. Ends up being a much bigger payoff here. The bottom being an attack 1 at range 3. From yourself. You don't grant one, but you will shortly. With ice, it's an attack 2 muddle at range 3. So we like that. And then there's the other part where grant an ally who has strengthen an attack 2 at range 3, and they have to shoot at the same target you shot at. This ends up being really good with bring them down, where you throw a spear, tag an enemy, and then give an ally strengthen, and then use the bottom of this to throw another spear at them, and then give the ally you strengthened a shot at it. Just hammer 3 attacks in. Attack 2, and then attack 3 with advantage with take command into play. Ended up being really good at bringing them down and unleashing the archers. That was one of my favorite combos. We love that. 10 out of 10. I'm going to say 10 out of 10 of so many of my cards because I am full of myself, and we need to let her just experience joy of having one of her things deployed to. I'm so glad you can finally play them. I think I keep hitting this. No, I don't have autism. Why do you ask? Armory. During your attacks, you can move this character token any number of spaces forward to add +2 attack for each space it was moved. Number 1, the amount of strength you have in your kit means you can turn this into very high-powered attacks very quickly. I want to point out that, remember how I said a lot of these characters were tested in tandem? This with Cassandra, where you can effectively start knowing, like, stacking your own deck to where you know what your things are. Cassandra and Satha are best buddies with Armory because you can know how many, like, all right, I need to kill this enemy, but they're at this, so I need to use exactly 2 pips to make sure they die. Cassandra and Satha know how to use Armory to make sure that they can kill the enemies in the fewest attacks possible required, meaning there will be fewer actions needed to clear rooms, and it is so huge. So we love Cassandra. They're just best buddies. They're like going to have a spa day together at the Frosthaven spa, which unfortunately, even though I did not actually tell Isaac to make a Frosthaven spa, but that would have been cool. It could have been more of a Kasana, because Frosthaven reminds me of, Scandinavia. They love saunas up there, man. They enjoy it. I'm actually going next year again to Scandinavia. I really like specifically Denmark and Norway, and I guess I normally associate Sweden with saunas, but I'm sure they all like it. The bottom of this, so it's initiative 14, which we love. 14 is like the cutoff. I like 15, but 14 is the really good. Move 4. Here's the funny part. Armory was really designed about this bottom action more. I think I think initially it was more of a, like, it was mostly in a retake. Armory was initially more designed around the bottom action here, which we really love. I love this. This is one of my favorites. But move 4, consume ice to get shield 1. This is very similar to, like, the one card I left from the red guards, Flame Shield, where you move 4, consume fire, get a shield. Fantastic. This is the same, except for one big bonus. Also, it's level 5 instead of level 1. You attack 1 and muddle an adjacent enemy. Fantastic. But you get plus X, where X is your shield value. So if you have take command and play, and if you have play a top action that gives you a shield, and then use the bottom action to consume ice, so you're like, wow, we quickly got to 3 shield and turn this into a move 4, shield oneself, attack 4, muddle. It ramps up very quickly. Also, if you have other, like, shield value stuff, you can kind of try to come up with creative ways to boost this. But this ends up being notably more powerful, and it gives the defender build some really much needed punch. And we love punch. Anyway, that's me. Crashing Steel. Crashing Steel went through a bunch of versions. Initially, my design for Crashing Steel was knock an enemy away and then step into their spot and then hit them again. And then it was like knock an enemy away, step into their spot to make it a lower level, and then very inspired by Tide of Iron, specifically from the 4th edition fighter. And then it was just a knock an enemy away with no attack built in, and then one ally adjacent to now the enemy gets to do a big attack. And the problem is it ended up being a little too hard, so it got bounced back to the initial idea of attack an enemy, step into their spot, and then attack an enemy again. But that was a little too powerful, so it has ice built into the requirement. And removing the requirement of, like, you need to step into the hex that they vacated, because it ends up being too complicated. So the Drew kind of just simplified the version of the card. Attack 3, push 2, move 2, and if you have ice, you can attack 3 again. Notice there's not a lot of special text. This overwent a crap ton of revisions to try to make it like, we loved the ping pong machine, but this one was by far the best version. And making it require ice made it a little bit less broken, because now you actually have to set it up to get the full effect. Also, Initiative 29 is fine. The bottom is a loss, which hasn't really changed much, or didn't change. I'm going to be honest, it looks so much similar to the first version we had on it. But jump 4, attack 2 on everything adjacent to you, brittle everything, and then ice. Brittle is very good for support actions in general, because it allows allies to pile on those and, like, just kill them. Alternatively, you can pop them yourself with one of your heavy hits, especially if you are using, like, Northern Valor, because this is another one of those where you can jump in, brittle all enemies, Northern Valor. And if you're surrounded by enemies at the time, and because of a jump, you can try to fit yourself into really narrow positions. Northern Valor could potentially easily be an attack 6, which against brittle could mean that this is very easily does 12 or more damage. Not saying I'm listing a specific play test example from memory, but that's the thing. We wanted to include brittle in the kit. That was talked about early on, where I'm like, we should, because Satha is Frosthaven, Satha should have at least one little bit of brittle, and this was my attempt to add that. So Crashing Steel is one of my favorite cards. The ping pong version is not as ping pongy, but it's still very good. Defiance. This is the funny part where I remembered I couldn't come up with a name for this card, so it was just True with a TRVE metal steel, just as like it is a ongoing joke from the Power Metal Discord to do True with a V. I'm gonna be honest, it's well out of the Discord. Also admitting that look, I like hanging out in Discord. I mean, I think you probably figured that out already. We're too gay to not do that. But anyway, eventually it's like, we need an actual name for it. And I'm like, because I was submitting it for development, and I was like, Defiance. And somehow that stuck still. But heal yourself for 2 if you have ice, which is great. So one of the ways is ice in play? Yes. Heal yourself for 2. The nice part about this is it's a non-loss stun, which is really hard to find in kits. So far, all of our really hard controls are like, from Implacable Advance require it to be a loss. But now we have a non-loss stun in the kit, and you can grant all allies a move 1, especially if you need to get them out of position, and if you have take command and play, it is 2. A lot of times I ended up pairing Defiance more with I ended up pairing Defiance more with the tanky build, and a lot of times with the tanky build I didn't use take command, so I didn't end up getting the grant all allies move 2 instead. So usually more often was just the 1, but if you wanted to use this with the take command build, this is clearly an incredibly good option. But the bottom, remove one of the negative conditions you have, and then you can immobilize an adjacent enemy and then run away. That's the funny part. You can just make an enemy or you can just move 3 anyway. But this used to have the text initially, you can play Defiance while stunned. But we added, Drew moved it over to a perk, or the ability from Defiance, allowing you to play this while stunned, to just say, you're immune to stun. And I'm like, oh, I love this so much better. I thought that stun immunity would be too good. But so if any of you like Satha's stun immunity, that was Drew's idea. But it was built into the Defiance kit initially. Send Them Reeling. This is a much better version of Hobbling Strike. And it's much cooler. Initially, Hobbling Strike was an attack to immobilize cleave, but now it requires you to have ice to immobilize all the enemies. But the fact that it pushes them, pushing and immobilize is fantastic. So that ended up being a better part of the kit to make them push. There was a push and immobilize early in the kit, but it was a single target thing that we ended up deleting, and then Send Them Reeling kind of became the hobbling sweep version of that. Sometimes it's hard to come up with really good designs, and you kind of just take better versions of your level 1 cards. And that ended up being a lot of good guidance for myself to do stuff like that. The bottom of that is the next 2 attacks performed by an adjacent ally, they get to add X to the attack, where X is your current shield value. Infuses ice. And note that despite the fact that it's like the next 2 attacks, they can potentially get a big attack bonus. No loss. Just lasts forever until some adjacent allies do attacks. This is, in my opinion, one of the funniest cards of combining both the take command and the get behind me build. Because you're like, all right, I want a bunch of shield. Yes, but I also want to grant allies attacks. So this allows you to, obviously you don't need take command you did use this, but you can use it to grant allies attacks while they're adjacent to you while you have shield. So there's ways to use it, but more often than not, this is closer to the get behind me, but it's definitely a way to buff allies while you're mega shielded. So sometimes also allies will want to get adjacent to you because of it. I found this to be more helpful with ranged attackers for sure, though. Um, Simply because it's hard to, like, all right, I'm shielded this round. Now I need to get adjacent to you and adjacent to an enemy. It absolutely happens all the time, but I found it notably more often and specifically while we were testing with like Hale and Cassandra. But yeah, I mean, obviously everyone. And I tested a lot of the versions of Satha without the other characters, mostly because when I was doing some of my own personal testing, trying to like, all right, I'm going to learn Hale and I'm going to learn it was like, oh, that's too much. I'm just going to use classes I'm familiar with. So I had a lot of my go-to characters, and ranged attacks ended up being really well. Like I was testing her with like the new Spell Weaver, and that was really fun. Although they often fought for ice, that's why I leaned on more fire on that Spell Weaver. But that's neither here nor there. For Frosthaven, initially there was 4 of these options, but they are now 3. Choose any 2 of the following 3 abilities in any order you want that infuse ice. Move 4, attack 4, heal 4 self. And one ally gets to pick 2 of them. Here's the funny part with Take Command. That is you can grant them a move 5, attack 5. A lot of times, I would wait for an ally to be in position. I'd make sure they're strengthened, grant them an attack 5 with strengthen, heal 4 self. It's huge. So, I'm gonna be honest. I forget what the 4th option was, but I split it into 4 sections and said pick 2. And I think Drew killed one of the options and just made them all in a line. So it's definitely more readable now. So good job, Drew. You're fantastic. Again, amazing. And the bottom is a move 4, good for mobility. And then the next ally to an attack this round gets +2 to their attack. Kind of hard to complain. You do need to generally pair it with one of your myriad of low initiative cards to really, because 79 might be a little late, but that's okay. This one's perfectly fine. Hiccup. Obviously, this one's more of a for Frosthaven's definitely more of a support character card, and the top is more of a tanky. Send Them Reeling is more of a tanky card, but that's fair. Now we got the level 8 cards. Lead from the front. We finally got one of the cards. I kept on trying to fit in cards that grant shield 2 self throughout the thing, and Drew finally gave me one. But lead from the front. Shield 1 self, but if you have ice, it's shield 2 instead. Finally, shield 2. And then after each attack ability this round, you can perform a heal 1, range 2. The funny part about this is sometimes you end up just getting attacked by an enemy, and they're like, all right, cool, I've got shield 4, and they draw an attack, and they're like, cool, I did 3 damage. Well, that was nothing. Also, I healed myself. You attacked and I gained health. It's like the reverse of the feels bad when you're like, I'm attacking a flame demon, -2. I did no damage. You take 3 also. Crap, I attacked the enemy, did nothing, and yeah. So now you can make an enemy kind of feel that pain of, you attacked me, and I healed and didn't take any damage. It's such a fun feeling. The bottom, on the other hand, you can pick an ally within range 3. You heal them, you ward them, you strengthen them. Keep in mind that strengthen is incredibly pivotal to stuff, especially if you're using the level 4 card Strike Now. Hey, ally, yes, heal, ward, strengthen, now play a card. Huge. It's really well. Also, if you have ice, you can brittle an adjacent enemy, which another part of that. I'm pretty sure that it's probably my bad memory that brittle might actually have been Drew's edition, but trying to come up with a non-conditional way to strengthen allies on the bottom was very necessary. So that's why I added that to the kit. Bonded through battle. So remember how I'm like, yeah, you can play cards. You can play cards. Yeah. But at the end of this turn and your next 4 turns, pick an ally within range 3, and they can immediately just play a card for free. Take Command loves this. This is the problem because the bottom of lead from the front is very good for Take Command, and the top of Bonded Through Battle is also really good for Take Command, and the bottom of Bonded Through Battle is also good. Like, Take Command is really, really, those leader builds are very sad here because both of these are good. But the top of Bonded Through Battle is just so much more fun, in my opinion, than Lead from the Front. But Lead from the Front we love. But that, just play your cards for free. In the bottom of Bonded Through Battle, move 3, and then pick either strengthen yourself or loot 1. Move 3 and loot 1. Move 3 or strengthen self. Fantastic. I had a few more cards that were pick 1 of the following, pick 2 of the following, but they ended up getting pushed out. So I think there only ended up being 2, but that's fine. And they're kind of late level anyway. But trying to show Satha's versatility. But it's strengthen on bottom we love, and move and loot we love. Now you get to do that anytime of your choice. Let's get to the level 9 cards. Level 9 cards. I love it spelling out sentences with the card names. Or like card names that when you say them together, like work together. So level 9, I don't know. I just like theming them. So when I actually ended up naming level 9 cards, I honestly, one of them was like, I was had the test name like Iron Maiden, and I was trying to do some sort of retaliate tanky build. It just pitched it. I'm like, I don't like adding retaliate to the kit. It's just much harder to do, and it was mostly focused on, well, how about instead of just kind of using some of like the red guard inspiration of gain a bonus to your attack equal to your shield value and stuff like that. So that ended up just being removed entirely. And then the cards fight as one and stand against many, where I just love fight as one, stand against many. First off, anyway, I'm just hyping up the naming scheme of it. Strengthen 2 targets within range 1. This is a loss. Then you attack 5, and then all strengthened allies get to do an attack 5. Note that if you have many bottom ways of applying strengthen, or if they're lingering from other rounds, this can trigger a cascade of just a bunch of attack 5s. Obviously, as a level 9 loss, but it can have incredibly good impact. Not only that, but you can strengthen yourself to make sure that attack 5 really lands. With take command, obviously, also you can make sure that all these are 6s, but only if you want to do that. And the bottom is obviously incredibly good for take command. You and all your allies can now move 3 and attack 2 in specifically that order. Then you can decide the order of which of the allies go and do that. But all allies and self within range 3. Boom. I guess self within range 3. All self and all allies within range 3. We're just talking about it. We don't need to. But pardon me. Move 3, attack 2. So obviously with take command, move 4, attack 3. A bunch of move 4, attack 3. Infuse ice, non-loss. We love it. Stand against many. Attack 3. Attack all adjacent enemies. And then it's attack 4 if you infuse ice. And then you shield oneself. But if you're if you attack 2 or more enemies with this attack, you get shield 2 self. So now you have 2 ways to get shield 2 self for the round. And all you have to do is get really close to enemies. On an Inish 13. Yay. And the bottom of stand against many is incredibly lone wolf. It's not the same ability as it was, but it's definitely inspired by Lone Wolf. Stand against many, to add +2 to all your attacks while there are more enemies than allies within range 2. You want to get in their face. Obviously, the leader type builds love fight as one, and the defender builds are stand against many. But I felt like the theme of them, fight as one, feels very thematically by name like a leader, and stand against many feels like the defender. So these are like the capstone cards for Satha, and I'm like, I fucking love this so much. So before we dig into more silly stuff, we should get into her perks. So on her perks, like just going through some of these, like I don't need to go all of them one at a time. This isn't a guide, but specifically the ones that I really liked that I was trying to figure out ways to add were in Frosthaven there were a couple of these ones, especially like the Blink Blade, where you would draw a rolling modifier and then put it in front of you and wait for a thing to trigger. And I tried to use some of that where it's like the next time an ally, like an AMD, it was a rolling AMD that whenever it popped up, you would put it in your zone, and then next time an ally would draw an AMD, they would get like +2 to the bonus. And the problem is that is just really hard to communicate. It sounded really fun. That didn't end up working out. I'm pretty sure I may have tossed that out before I even gave it to Drew. I can't remember if that was before, because a lot of the design development I ended up doing before I even handed it off. Or I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's not. It's very annoying and finicky. I have a lot of fun ideas that don't translate, or are just a little bit too much bookkeeping. Trust me, that's been a problem my whole life. Like I've tried to design games back in like middle school, like 5th and 6th grade. I was like using stuff with like notebook paper on the playground and stuff. Yes, I was not really beat up, but like, I was definitely made fun of. uh, you know, for a variety of reasons. But like the big thing I liked here is there's one grant an ally an attack. It's either an attack 3 or an attack 2. But making your deck full of plus zeros is not something you want to do. But plus zeros that grant an ally either melee or ranged attacks is pretty great. Obviously goes really well with the take command build. And then there's another one that has a rolling disarm that also allows you to grant an ally a move 2. And this is one of those very fun ways to not only that enemy's disarmed, also get out of position. I need to take the hits. Very fun there. Replacing, also I want to point out, I love replacing -1s, but replacing -1s with rolling shield. Every time I say rolling shield, I just think of Mega Man X's Armored Armadillo, which I love. I love Mega Man X so much, but I haven't played it in a while. And rolling ward feels fun. I don't always like rolling modifiers, but this one I'm like, I really like a few of these. So, and then she has effectively four non AMDs, which is unusual. But the fact that like whenever you'd gain stun, negate the condition is a ignore items writer with it. So yeah. So this allows her to wear heavy armor and also ignores stun. There's not very many situations where it comes up, but the situations where you do, it's funny when you see an enemy draw a stun card and like, someone needs to take it. And Satha's like, I'll do it. That's the situation, because it doesn't come up often where enemies have this, where they have stun cards or stuff like that. But most of the time, people like try to figure out, okay, can we kill it in time, or okay, who would be the best person, or something like that, or they don't even coordinate. This allows you to run up and take the stun and just ignore it. And then allies love it. That's the cool part. People love playing with Satha because Satha saves the day. And then there's whenever you long rest, perform strengthen an ally within range 3. So this is kind of like a carryover of the inspiration. Inspiration tokens initially were, without going too much, lasted until allies rested, and then they lost their inspiration when they rested. And the idea is then it changed to, well, whenever you rest, allies do that. So eventually this became the equivalent of inspiration was a bust, but whenever you long rest, strengthen an ally ends up being, that ends up pretty solid. The next perk is funny because I talked about it in the chat. I didn't I had a very early version of the effectively the take command card was whenever you grant an ally, the very early version of the card, and I think it was before I passed it off to Druid, every time you perform a grant action to an ally, give them +1, and then all cards can be freely displayed. And I think it was a top instead of a bottom, but I ended up pitching that, and obviously it's not grant actions, it's just allies get +1 attack on your turn. So it's gone through iterations, but the I removed it from the kit. The all initiatives may be discussed freely and precisely. And then Drew added it back in the form of this perk. So that's a smart decision. Also, this is going to be one of the funniest perks that either every table that does things a certain way absolutely takes, or just ignores, or people are going to go like, we just play like this anyway. And if you do that, sure, crutches are fine, I guess. I don't like the idea of, I know, play the game in a way that is most fun to you. But also, I think there is a lot of joy that's gained from the game from having surprise at what your allies are going to do and using a little bit of vague communication. And I do think that over time, the vague communication ends up being almost the same as open communication. And my group is very familiar with that because I know we were playing Gloomhaven 2nd edition recently, and I had a friend say a thing, and I'm like, okay, all right, we're good. I've got a thing to go with it. And he's like, are you sure? And this is my boyfriend, because he was playing the Cragheart and I'm playing Spellweaver. And I'm like, I literally called out the very two cards he was playing and the initiative he was going at. I'm like, because I know you're playing, it was 13. It was Unstable Upheaval and something. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm going to be going before you. I'm going to give you a buff at 12 with my Heat Wave. So you're going to do this real good this turn. And calling out the 2 cards he was playing, and then like saying the other people's initiative. You eventually, not everyone memorizes the numbers. I know I'm like a little bit more, that in that case, but um, there's still plenty of times where I don't know the classes 100% or what card they're thinking of, where seeing what people play still surprises me at this point. And I think that element is what I like. It's another reason why I don't really like playing like Gloomhaven Digital single player a lot, because it just becomes a single player game of like chess and stuff. And I love that kind of video game aspect, but I love the multiplayer aspect of Frosthaven and Gloomhaven so much more than the single player, that I love this perk. Ends up being really great. I don't think that removing the element of surprise is bad, but it ends up being very important for take command when you're like, hold on, you have like 7 cards this rest. Which one are you? Can we like bust that one out? And you can like freely like talk about more, at least initiative value. So you're not like, show me your hand, but at least you can say like, I've got a thing at 13, I've got a thing at 20, and like you can go through and like, all right, this will allow me to make sure I'm going to be able to grant you actions at the correct time. Yeah, we love it. And the bottom is just the first time you or an ally exhaust each scenario, everyone gets a ward, a strengthen, and a heal. This one is notably more valuable than initially anticipated in Frosthaven. I know we did some tests in Gloomhaven's 2nd edition, and I think that some Frosthaven scenarios are a little overtuned, but this one ended up being really good. So I think I have problems with eye contact during this recording, and I need to fix that, maybe for the Anafi one. But anyway. But oh yeah, and she has her masteries. Her masteries are don't let an ally be targeted by an attack ever during an entire scenario. That one's pretty easy to follow. That one's just a fun one. The idea of, how like get behind me says this falls off like whenever an ally gets attacked. The answer is yeah. Just do that to your best of your ability. You have plenty of ways to get allies out of position, out of bad positions anyway. So that one's a little bit easier if you do a lot of movement, granting things, as well as, being sure that you're at the front line. Allies are more than comfortable to let you take all the hits. The other one is make sure that every turn an ally takes an attack or move. Obviously very much into the take command. You have the ability that there are a lot of bottom cards that also allow you to grant movement to allies. So a lot of times just shuffling along, granting them with like Wolfpack tactics, or granting them stuff you like bring them down, and all the other cards. You have more than enough to fill your hand with 10 cards that grant allies the ability to play cards or do stuff. Like you can just say, here are 9 cool cards and take command. All you have to make sure is you do the turn you take command is do a top action, like Shared Glory. Just grant someone a movement or something like that, and then you are good to go. So that's Satha. Satha was incredibly fun to design. That was, like I said, flexed a little bit more of my design muscles than Anafi, where I was trying to fit a specific thing. So I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you have a little bit more questions on Satha, feel free to ask me. I will talk about her relentlessly. She is like one of my favorite projects, and yeah, it was really fun. So thanks all of you for watching. Thank you to my patrons. You are wonderful people. Really appreciate y'all. Obviously, we're going to be doing some more 2nd edition guides that are coming out. Specifically, the Bruiser and the Spellweaver are the first ones up. And I don't know what I'm going to work on after that, but we'll be working on more 2nd edition guides, as well as I am writing some custom homebrew Lancer content. So if you're interested in Lancer or 2nd edition Gloomhaven guides, you get to read them all first before you get to read them first on Patreon. So, and if you're not, you can just use it to support me, because I could use it. But yeah, thanks all of you. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for supporting me, and thanks all of you for watching.